And if you don't mind, I'm going to share that whole boundary just so it's very clear for what we do have with around the I say no when I mean no.
Sure.
Because it's I say no when I mean no, and I say yes when I mean yes. And I accept no guilt for any decision that I make. And if I feel that I am being pressured into a choice other than the one that I made, then I remove myself from the pressure and I do not re engage unless the pressure has been removed around the choice that I have made. Right. So that helps reinforce that we always have choice. We always have choice. Because again, it goes back to our family and our friends. I would say almost always, not always, but almost always have our best interest. They really desire to support us. So they're not doing it because they think, I'm going to make you feel so guilty for not doing this. It is, they really just want to have us there. It's not their desire to make us feel guilty. The guilt is coming from inside me, right? My inner critic is going crazy. They might not understand that. But if I've conveyed multiple times, look, my answer is no. I really appreciate the invitation. I have other things going on, or I just need self time. And they aren't able to accept that because they have something that is going on in their own mental framework of she would be better off if she was with us. I feel like she has something going on, especially when I was going through the divorce and my friends thought that I was in a place of needing support. But what I really needed was time. They thought for certain that I needed to be uplifted, but what I needed in my heart was my own space. Their intentions were pure. So I definitely needed to enforce my boundaries, not because their intentions were anything other than loving, but I knew what I needed because I'm in here. I'm in myself. So we have to remember that we have the choice to hold our boundary, but how we hold that boundary is also a choice. And being mean or cruel when the people that love us are simply attempting out of their own way to be loving and kind and create an opening, that really has to be a choice too. So pausing and choosing that interaction is going to be key. And we don't have to make it adversarial.
Absolutely. And that just is actually a really good segue into our heart-centered method,
Yeah.
right? And because you just nailed step one. Step one being pause and understand your truth.
Yes.
Right. And that's exactly what you're talking about here. And most of the time, and I'm as someone who lived life this way, I would enforce things that were kind of off the cuff. Maybe I didn't like it in that moment, but is that if you were to sit me down and ask you, is that actually how you interact with the world or how you want the world to interact with you? Or is it just a fleeting moment of like, it's annoying right now? And that's a very valid question. So taking the time first to understand that, well, when things do annoy you or they are, they're impactful in some way, it doesn't have to be negative. It could be positive, whatever it is. Understanding if that is just in the moment versus an actual, like, this is actually how I live in this world. Those are two very different things. And so taking the time to understand that is a huge aspect. So knowing the truth, and that's why knowing your truth. So taking the time to write it down and really get clear of your personal boundaries and your guiding principles is a really great way to understand your truth through that process. So that's why I love, it's such a powerful, powerful practice to explore and understand because you learn a lot about yourself as you're flowing through. And there's so many that I wrote down in the beginning and then going back and saying, is this is this a preference? Is this you know, a little what do they call it? A pet peeve? Is this a annoyance? Is it a desire? Is it, you know, or is it real core truth? Because if we just separated the whole world from our preferences and pet peeves and all this kind of stuff, we're just going to unintentionally alienate a lot of people. And it wouldn't be fair to expect someone else to live and completely, you know, not live up to your uncommunicated pet, you know, all of that kind of stuff. It's just, there's no way. I mean, it would be, everyone would be walking on eggshells the whole time to each other. And that's just a terrible way to live. So taking that time to write everything, like what I wrote everything down, and then I went through with a fine tooth comb and then was like, oh, okay, what are some of these core things? Because I do, you know, okay, maybe I'm not the biggest fan of someone, you know, chewing popcorn super loud in the movie next to me, but is it
popcorn in a theater? Well, I can't do that.
The world, right?
Yeah.
That someone is doing that. No, like the movie's loud enough. It's I can focus my awareness on the movie and enjoy without, and allow someone else to have their space too, where it doesn't impact me enough, and it's not a core truth of mine of whether of some of that. That is a more of a short-term annoyance because I love movies so much. So it's, and that's
everyone who's listening to this is going to say, if I see Austin Yule in a movie theater, I'm going to make certain that I go to a different movie.
Yeah. Totally. So yeah, I just kind of want to bring that part up because that was such a beautiful, how you approach that was such a beautiful perspective around step one of, you know, pause and know your truth or understand your truth. Yeah.
All right. Step 2, take us away.
So step 2 is share with compassion. And I know we've covered this a little bit, but you know, reality is you don't have to be a dick. You can you can share your boundary or your guiding principle with someone and communicate effectively in a way that isn't hostile, that isn't, you know, sarcastic or some kind of negative inducing approach that in some way can either be super egoic or put someone off or just it may actually, if you don't do it in a compassionate way, it actually could incite someone to want to do it more to you just to piss you off because you're not being compassionate. Because again, no one's perfect. And a lot of the times people do things and it's not because of purpose, it's just unawareness. And so if we can have, you know, take positive intent, like we talk about, and just say, okay, I'm going to share this, do it with compassion, do it with love, do it with care, do it with how you would like to be presented in terms of that communication. One thing I think would really help, and I'd love for you to share, is what happens when you do that compassionately multiple times and it's still not being respected.
That's a great question. We can't force people to honor our boundaries, right? We can request, we can share, we can take a stand. But part of the reason I have what I call the ripcord effect is because I do know that even once you've communicated your boundary in the most loving and positive way, it does not mean that someone is going to hear you, no matter how many different ways you come at it. Or if they do hear you, that they're going to agree with it and honor it. And that's their choice. But then I have the choice to pull the ripcord and get the heck out of there. We all need that fail safe because the final choice we all have is to disengage. Meeting that with more hostility is only going to create arguments and more distance between you and whomever it is that you've drawn the boundary with. And is that what the ultimate goal is of creating the boundary? When I'm setting boundaries, it's to create more connection in the relationship. so that there isn't distance that gets created. If I use it to create more distance, then I'm actually counteracting the very purpose of the boundary. I don't want to do that. So the best thing I can do is understand that we're agreeing to disagree. You don't respect my boundary. I'm not going to take you crossing my boundary. So the best thing I can do is just stop the interaction, understand that you're going to cross that boundary, and I can leave if that comes up again and again. You'll start to get the point that if you cross that boundary, I leave. You cross that boundary, I leave. Every time you cross that boundary, I leave. So if you cross that boundary, I will not be present. It'll be that clear and simple. You can cross the boundary, I won't be around. Doesn't mean I won't be present in your life. It just means every time you cross that specific boundary, I won't be there.